Gaming has always been a fantasy-based outlet for gamers. Players immerse themselves into the world of their character and have an opportunity to escape the often dismal reality. But over the past decade, it seems gaming has lost its touch. Long gone are the days of peaceful, bug-free campaign experiences. Instead, the new era of gaming is one that is fueled by widespread toxicity. You could argue that for every negative thing that has happened in gaming, there's been an equally positive change. However, despite the equilibrium, it is ultimately the explosion of the multiplayer scene and the greed it derives that contributes to the downward trend in quality of games. I think the biggest issues with gaming today can be split up into three problems. Number one, an abundance of remakes, remasters, and sequels. The most obvious example is Valve. How annoying has Valve been over the last decade? Almost a decade ago, Valve was the company leading the charge in unique gaming experiences. Classic games like Dota, Portal, and Half-Life were all made by Valve. But since Portal 2 in 2011, Valve has failed to uphold their creative repertoire. Remaining complacent, Valve seems to prioritize the money and continue making remakes of their past successes, such as the failed attempt at a Dota 2 card game. Like, what even is that? With one of the highest profits made to employees hired ratio, Valve seems to have forgotten their history and replaced it with a businessman mindset. Rather than satisfying the players, they choose to output the minimum amount of work for the greatest reward. As a consumer myself, I would buy a Half-Life 3, but this is exactly the problem. Developers are happy to step away from the spotlight and earn revenue doing the same thing. This isn't just an issue with Valve, many other companies follow a similar complacent trend. Number 2. Developers seem to just follow trends for easy cash grabs. Take Titanfall for example. When they made advanced movement popular a couple years ago, Call of Duty and Halo just had to copy it. Even if the developers don't understand what makes the movement good, and even if it compromises the design style and the identity of the game, these people didn't care. They just copied it anyway. Developers seem to now just jump onto what is hot and alienate their fan base. As a result, many games are now just early access. In the past, this used to let players know that the game is a small-time game that does not have the budget that bigger companies have. But now, everyone is using this early access title as a facade to subtly let players know that the game is being released unfinished to keep up with trends and that there is no intention to fix it. Number 3. The explosion of the multiplayer scene, and especially esports. Once esports started to take off, developers started tailoring games to be competitive, and this has messed with their project's vision. Games have become overly competitive nowadays to the point where enjoying the multiplayer scene casually is almost impossible. These issues together have resulted in one of the worst outcomes in modern gaming: systemic toxicity. In almost all gaming communities, toxicity amongst the players is present. Whether the hate is fueled by an anger at the decline in quality games, the lack of consequences for bullying in the online scene, or even for plain enjoyment, all gamers have experienced moments of climax where they just see red. I know I have. Players do not recognize others as real, and with the ability to hide behind their screen, promote and partake in discrimination. It has gotten to the point where even pro players like XQC, a pro player in Overwatch, quit the game because he realized the game was changing his personality outside of gaming. Some may argue that the perception of the decline in gaming is solely due to the nostalgia older gamers feel for the glory days, causing our experience to only be negative due to the constant comparisons that we make. It's also possible that the recent negativity around changes in the gaming industry is outweighing the more positive innovations that have been made. Games definitely look better, plots have more gravity, and mechanics are even more unique. It's important to realize that gaming has never been perfect, but the recent changes in the gaming world and the negative outcomes such as toxicity is something that needs to be addressed.
Welcome to Toxicity in Gaming Culture. I'm here with John Jones. So, tell me about your experiences with gaming before the multiplayer scene exploded.
Gaming, in my opinion, was in its golden age before the rapid expansion of multiplayer gaming. The sudden surge in e-gaming has really taken away the joy that I and many of my old friends really used to experience from gaming.
So, that's really interesting. What is your experience with gaming more recently?
This isn't something I really want to disclose, but as I said before, the loss of happiness I found in gaming was instead replaced through online internet trolling and abuse. For me, the increased skill gap I faced in the game was made up for by an increased sense of power and authority by putting other people down for no reason.
What made you realize you're toxic? Have you been involved in any cases of racism?
I don't really think I want to get too specific into what I did say, but for the sake of being here right now, I will admit that I did participate in heavy ableism and likewise participated in racist rhetoric to people on the party chat. That's Brad.
What made you realize your toxicity was unjustified?
By coming on this show, I've taken a step away from my trolling persona and realized that multiplayer games should be used to bring people together, not as a tool to alienate and discriminate people.
I'm here with...
Shinkwon.
What racism have you experienced in gaming?
I've definitely experienced a lot of racism in gaming. It's made me not want to play out of fear. I hear jokes about Hiroshima, sushi. Like, I'm not even Japanese. I feel like my race has been used as a punching bag for many people. Sorry, can we cut?
What would you like to say to these self-proclaimed internet trolls?
I'd first like to say that it hurts. People don't often put themselves in the shoes of those who are affected. And I'm proud of my Chinese culture. I don't think it should affect people when playing games about what race they are in.
The advancement of gaming into the public eye and the rapid expansion of the multiplayer scene can be said to be quite multifaceted in regard to its benefit to gaming as a whole. While on one hand, allowing people to discover new passions and find moments of solitude and joy whilst playing video games is a great outcome for the ever-increasing popularity of gaming, however, it has also provided unwanted avenues for bigotry, racism, and trolling to go unchecked within in-game voice chats and messages. These actions can have detrimental impacts on the mental health of those most vulnerable within the community, whilst also promoting and instilling toxic and damaging ideals and beliefs into the minds of naive young people. As mentioned prior, the rise in competitive esports gaming has shifted the paradigm of the industry as a whole, where companies producing and maintaining modern-day titles are more focused on developing and investing into the multiplayer aspect of each game, as these areas have the greatest return in revenue outside of disc and online copy sales. This, as a result, causes a sudden influx in competitive players present within everyday game lobbies, oversaturating them to the point that casual gamers are no longer able to experience the game to their liking, as people with different goals are being forced to play together against their will much more than they used to. This issue is one that should be combated from the top down or the bottom up. By that, I mean it's either a problem that the companies have to fix with their matchmaking, or individuals have to fix by somehow policing the issue in games themselves. The one thing that all of these approaches are missing is the medium in between that used to exist. That is, community-led moderation and enforcement. This was a natural property of privately run community servers, but is now something of the past. For a company to enforce a non-toxic environment on a large scale would mean hiring large amounts of people to serve solely as moderators and admins, whilst also training them to enforce these new guidelines and so forth. The large cost of implementing something like this is not viable from a business standpoint, and thus any perceived benefit that might come to the community is outweighed by the need to turn over large amounts of money in profit. From their point of view, it should be considered that they are solely more interested in developing and selling games instead of managing individual servers. On the other side of the coin, leaving the job up to individual players is both unreasonable and unethical, as players are made to provide a solution to a problem that they have no real power in stopping, considering the current state of game matchmaking. To expect that all individual players on any given server enforce good behavior instead of easily muting and ignoring toxic individuals is unreliable. A greater array of tools should be given to players for them to create spaces where they can selectively enforce a positive gaming environment from the get-go, whilst also providing consequences for toxic behavior. Sadly, the convenience that comes with matchmaking makes such a switch not that incentivized. The times of searching through lists of empty servers to find a perfect match are now long gone, since you can just join a match with similarly skilled players with the click of a button and begin playing. I still believe that there are ways that the community can have a greater involvement in solving this issue, but it's something that needs to be focused on a greater scale than just a player in order to see true change. Thank you.
What is your experience with gaming more recently?
I hate gaming nowadays. Like everyone, when I joined the multiplayer scene and was immediately confronted with constant discrimination, it really turned me away from gaming. The mainstream gaming scene has become extremely competitive, and many of the people I played with resorted to misogyny to find some sort of enjoyment to fill the void of constant losing. I felt comfortable with the hatred because I felt like I wasn't talking to anyone real.
Have you been involved in any cases of misogyny?
Yeah, well, I'm not really proud of it, but there definitely have been instances where I've called women some unwanted names. I've said some things I'm not really proud of, and I've definitely promoted jokes made against women as well.
What made you realise your misogyny was unjustified?
This show has really opened my eyes to the positivity gaming can bring. Rather than discriminating others to fuel a false power complex, I now realise gaming should be used to bring people together.
Thank you. I'm here with... What misogyny have you experienced in gaming?
Yeah, I've definitely had a tough experience in my time gaming. I've been told to go back to the kitchen. I've been called uncomfortable names, which I really don't appreciate. It's made me absolutely terrified to join any voice chats, and it's absolutely ruined my past love for gaming.
What would you like to say to these self-proclaimed internet trolls?
I think those people just need to understand and recognise that they're hurting real people, and it does hurt. Some friendly banter on games is always good, but you're crossing a line if you're hurting someone's feelings and you're ruining their gaming experience.
Following on from Pasan, I'll be diving into the negative impact misogyny has on the gaming community. As seen in the following graph, there are more male gamers than there are female gamers, but the percentages certainly aren't overwhelming. However, when you look at the proportion of females in the competitive gaming scene, there's a very noticeable difference. 95% of competitive gamers are male, while only 5% are female. So why is this the case when the share of gamers is relatively even? Natalie Denk, a research associate and a passionate gamer, stated that a fear of sexism was a key factor in the lack of females pursuing gaming. She explained that she hasn't met a female esports athlete who hasn't reported sexist incidents while gaming. So how can we diminish this fear and encourage females to continue pursuing gaming? Well, we need to start at the top. A study undertaken in 2020 revealed that 84% of executive positions in the top 14 global gaming companies are held by men, and only 24% of workers in the entire industry are female. So why are these numbers so low? Well, in another 2015 survey, it was found that 45% of women working in the gaming industry felt that their gender limited their potential career progression. On top of this, 1/3 of these females had experienced some form of harassment due to their gender. In order for females to feel comfortable pursuing gaming, we need to first eliminate the misogyny taking place in the workplace so that we can get more females working in the gaming industry. These workers will then be able to assist in making the gaming community a safer place for females, which will in turn attract more females to begin and continue gaming. Lara Croft of Tomb Raider and Tifa Lockhart of Final Fantasy are two examples of the recent success that has come from a push for more female protagonists in games, which was initiated by female workers. Simple inclusions such as these ones will influence females to give gaming a go.
Although not all is grim for gaming in the 21st century, the mere presence of the COVID pandemic was undoubtedly damaging to not only systems like education and the economy, but further the live interactions of us social beings. Yet through such tribulation and separation, we have bared witness to the togetherness and solidarity that online video games have provided us. Multiple studies have emerged from the pandemic showcasing the impacts of gaming in the online community in supporting mental health, work-life balance, and empowerment. Online platforms like the streaming company Twitch saw a boom in popularity during the pandemic, where it provided a place for individuals with similar interests to come together through a shared passion of gaming. Likewise, online voice platforms like Discord also saw an increase in downloads, as it allowed for people from all around the globe to come together. Among Us, Warzone, and Apex Legends are just some of the many games that brought people together through these tough times. Games were not just used as a source of entertainment, but as a medium to bring people together. Hence, to laugh, cry, challenge, or empathize, the list goes on. Video games unified us emotionally, enabling gamers to project our inner feelings and to have our voices be heard, something which the pandemic took from us. So, how does this tie into video games and toxicity? Well, whilst we often focus on the tragedy of video games on social interaction, perhaps, upon reflection, we should identify it instead as being tragically beautiful for the membership it provided during the pandemic and onwards. Online gaming stripped away our individual races, genders, sexualities, upbringing, and histories, instead replacing it with a mere mic which projected one's inner voice. Although the current community may be viewed as toxic, we should frame gaming as a way to unite. The pandemic has enabled us to rise over such arbitrary barriers, recognizing the vulnerability and crave for social interaction that it has caused us, allowing us to put our inherent differences aside as we sat down and completed that game of Among Us together as one.